our just initial call because I was like, oh yeah, he'll be easy to talk to. Like our brains will bounce around just fine.
We've got that compatible ADHD where we'll interrupt each other, but we won't get offended by it.
Yeah, and most of the time we came back and, both of us helped with that. We came back to things one way or the other.
Goodness.
That's cool.
When were you diagnosed with ADHD?
Phil for you.
Because women tend to, or girls or women tend to be underdiagnosed for the most part. For most things.
I'm totally guessing, but around 22, 25, 22, something like that. So later.
Okay.
So yeah, I actually.
In college or this is after college?
No, after college. So yeah, so I was like, 25-ish. I could look up the year, but somewhere around there. I was a new dietitian. And I was working, and this is partially speaks to the ADD-ness and partially, I don't know, it speaks to the time frame. But at the time I'm sure I had a computer, but I didn't have a laptop that I was working from. But anyway, I was taking notes on paper, with my clients. And I was scatterbrained. I had, a really half-assed filing system of what this looked like. So behind my chair was some sort of file system that in theory, the notes went in there. But of course, some days they didn't because, I don't know, squirrel, whatever.
Yeah. I know.
And so I had a girl come for a second session. Well, I don't know if I knew from digitally something told me we'd already had a session together or her name, but gosh darn it, I didn't remember anything. Nothing. And
I couldn't find the paperwork.
The notes. And I was like, oh man. So
I need to look into this.
But I will say different now than then, but now I don't always have to have my notes. It's different now. I think I work differently and, whatever. I can give it.
Well, you probably scaffolded your life.
I also remember differently now.
Yeah.
Like I've worked on that in different ways. But anyway, long story short, I gave her basically the exact same session as the first time.
Oh my God.
But she didn't stop me anywhere along the way. Couldn't tell you her name at this point. It's been a long time. But but then she went and complained. But it concerned me because that was the first time I had somebody complain.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the first time that I was like, oh, I don't remember. And so I was worried about my memory and my brain health. And my grandfather actually died of Alzheimer's. And I mean, I know I was young 20s, but still I'm like, oh, okay, we need this to be functioning correctly.
You and me both.
And so I went to a functional medicine practitioner. I mean, because in my mind, of course, this is also dietitian speaking, that I was like, all right, what nutrient am I deficient in?
Right.
Like, what's not working right? Because it's not like I'd had a lifelong memory thing. And I was like, something, I don't know, what am I doing? That's like, so I was like, I just want another brain. And I really like the idea of functional medicine. So I went and saw this guy and I laughed because he probably did this, especially once you've been doing a field for a while, he probably, I can look at a client and already detect some things just by someone's body language and, how they're holding their body and, whatever. Like there's a lot of things you can determine by looking at somebody.
Yeah.
And so he probably looked at me and was like, okay, I know what we're going to lean toward first. So anyway, we did some blood work and he had me do some tests on some iPad, a couple of tests on some iPad. And he's like, so you scored 10 out of 10 on the ADD scale.
That's conclusive.
But actually, what's even funnier based on that, so I'd gone in and I gone into his office, and I can't remember what we'd already done blood work or whatever, but then they send you into not a waiting room, but like the room, the actual exam room, right?
Yeah.
And you have to wait for the doctor or nurse to come in, right? And so I'm sitting there and I was like, I wasn't anxious. I was just like, I feel like
you're moving your
some
body.
jumping jacks. And I was like laughing because I was like, God, if there's a camera in here, they're going to be like, she's a nutbag.
She's definitely ADHD. They're like, checks out.
My brain wasn't even there. I wasn't even thinking about ADD. I was just like, they're going to think she's crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever. Because I wasn't even thinking about that. I just wanted him to help me with my memory. So I'm sitting there, but for all I doubt that. Who knows? Maybe they do have cameras in there. But anyway, that's when he came in and he's like, so you scored 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I also have MTHFR, which is a methylation thing, but we won't go into. But he was like, you need to take these vitamins. And he's like, and you need some Adderall or something. He's like, hey, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't take it anymore. But early
That's
then.
my next question. If you took any now.
So early then, and this is pre-kids and everything, that day I left his office, filled the prescription, and I don't. But never had it ever. I know some people take it socially and stuff like that. Never touched the stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No idea.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
It's
and
speed,
so
right?
exactly right. And so anyway, I knew friends who did it in college.
Yeah.
Whatever to study. But I was like,
that.
Coffee, it'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, which also I was like a nut job on coffee in college too, because I really didn't need it, and so it's like, hey, yeah, really good. Anyway, but it was a good study technique. Anyway, so I go and I went and met a friend, and I, took a dose, and it was a low dose, so like 10 milligrams or something, but I took a dose, and I don't know how long it takes. It's obviously been 20 years now or whatever, but I took it, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this how normal people think? It's like somebody stuck a vacuum in my ear and sucked out all the fuzz, and it slowed down all the moving balls. I was like, I'm a genius. I was like, this is amazing.
Wow.
And for me, it helped with focus and attention. And I don't really think it was a memory thing. I think it was more of a focus and attention and the bouncing balls in the head and all of those things. And he said, I laughed at this, but he said, how far did you go in school? And I was like, well, I have my master's. And he goes, oh, that must have been so hard. And I laughed. I was like, because I'd never thought about it in that way. I'd never thought about it in that way. But I was like, but now that I'm held this mirror up to like what's going on with my body, then I thought back to college, and in my mind, I didn't think it was hard, but I had developed coping mechanisms for my brain.
Masking,
meaning
you were working harder than other folks.
Well, meaning that I got nothing from sitting in 3-hour lectures, nothing, right? Like nothing. I'm like thinking about what I'm, I don't know, eating for dinner or whatever,
your
with my friends or like whatever. And I might write down a few key things, but was I connecting them to all the stories that these professors are saying about things? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't keep that focus.
Right.
And also I thought back to plenty of times in my life when I might have lunch with a friend, maybe a friend I love, maybe I'm super invested in what they have to say, but my brain was just bouncing off. I can't tell you how many times I would be gripping the chair to try to keep my brain focused on what they're saying. I'm like, I'm interested in what they're saying. Why is it, what's happening here?
My brain not playing with me. Yeah.
But anyway, but I also knew in college that I wasn't great at taking notes and listening I went to every single lecture, but I wasn't great at absorbing from the lecture. Whereas I had friends who could go and listen to the lecture. They didn't need notes and they'd remember things, right?
Yeah.
But I would partner with people who took great notes. And so then I would just get copies of their notes and I'd study the notes.
Yes.
I'd study just fine. And so that was a coping mechanism, but I didn't know it was.
Yes.
Right? I had no idea it was. I was just like, I know I don't take great notes and I don't pay
It's
attention.
just as good a skill as the thing that, all those are great skills.
And I had great short-term memory. So I'm like, I could cram like a mother. I'm like, I can cram really well and do great on the test and whatever. But I also think that during college, and we'll get into this another time, but like I, for a brief period of time in college, was not eating as well as I had been growing up or as well as I do now. And I think all of that impacts your brain. I know it impacts your brain.
Heck yeah.
And so I think I manage it so much better now because I eat well and I exercise well and I know like different nutrients that work well for the brain and, all of those things. And I also can be mindful of coping mechanisms and how I use them. But to kind of answer a half of your question, so I took that for a while and I found it really useful, but then I got pregnant and I was like, I'm not going to take it pregnancy or breastfeeding. And then I had my daughter and same thing. And I really didn't want anybody who does, you're fine if you want to take it long term, but I didn't love the idea of taking a medication long term.
Yep.
And I don't love the possible effects of all of those things. And so I was like, nope, we're going to find another way. And or be a little crazy, which I'm okay with.
Yeah. Well, we need all kinds of people.
Yeah, we do.
And I don't agree with the lifestyle drug thing.
Yeah.
Like, let's find a
Yeah,
way
I
to
don't
live with
I don't
who
either.
we are.
And that's,
Accept
you know,
who we
coming
are.
back to like what I do and who I am. I believe there's good ways to do that.
Yeah.
I do. And I do believe that food is really powerful in all of that. So
Heck yeah.
yeah.